Well,
Ooh,
we're,
wow.
yeah, wow. We got a whole new intro.
Hmm.
Uh, not just to this first ever live streaming for me. So um, I created the new intro, and I kind of like it. Um,
You created
any,
it?
yeah,
Wow. Impressed.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's pretty easy with the tools that they provide for you, you know.
Hmm.
Anyway, Eric, it's December 26th, the day after Christmas. Um, I want to talk about Christmas. And I want to ask you first, since you've been living in the Far East and in Chiang Mai, Thailand, um, I don't. That's not a Christian country, is it? Do they celebrate Christmas there?
They don't celebrate Christmas as as Christmas, but to be honest, I went to this restaurant. It's a real American style food restaurant at one of the major malls in my city. And after the meal, I went walking with a friend of mine to some other event, and the streets were loaded with people. I would say maybe half Chinese, half Westerners, and it was very festival. It looked like a Christmas street, you know. So they the thing about Thais is that they like celebrating things, and they're not fussy about, about what it is. So
So
it was a
is there a tradition of gift giving at all?
Not that I'm aware of. There may be some, but it's not like I don't think it's like it's like not a well. Let's put it this way: the building where I have my apartment, I've been there for several years, and usually they've had a Christmas tree with boxes, underneath it. It's not real gifts, but it looks like gifts. And this year they didn't do it, so I don't know why. But they do have Christmas trees, and they do. This is sort of a semblance of it, but it's not anything like what you would experience in a Christian country, I think.
Yeah. Well, here in Russia, uh, Christmas in the Orthodox tradition, and everybody here, just about the majority are Orthodox Christians, is January 7th. But I have
Hmm.
to tell you, I'm not sure the exact start date, but it was probably no later than December 1st. You started to see, in fact, it was American Thanksgiving. When I first saw it, uh, we went for coffee at a really nice little coffee shop we like, and they had a Christmas tree, beautifully decorated, and they were playing American Christmas carols. And then what happens shortly thereafter, all of these little booths appear, temporary booths in public places, in parks, uh, in the central part of Yalta. They're selling Christmas ornaments, selling all kinds of Christmas kinds of things,
Hmm.
candy canes, you name it. They're selling it, and they're selling Christmas trees everywhere. The Christmas trees are really popular with people here. I was very surprised. My first Christmas year, I couldn't believe it, and we even bought a small one.
Hmm.
We bought one every year since, but this year we didn't. Uh,
Hmm.
we didn't really have room for it um, in our little tiny apartment. But people buy it and they decorate these trees, and you hear American Christmas carols going everywhere.
Hmm.
So it's really interesting. But the big holiday, and I mean big, is New Year's Eve,
Hmm.
all across Russia. At midnight, Putin will come on and address the nation. He always has a really heartfelt, encouraging, hopeful message for the Russian people. And not just Christians, he addresses it to all some 185 different ethnic groups. And
Hmm.
then immediately after that, fireworks. They go off everywhere. Moscow, it's incredible because in 5, 6 locations around the city, it's going off. Here in
Hmm.
Yalta, we look out the window from my wife's parents, where we'll spend New Year's Eve. you can see all of Yalta, and fireworks are going off everywhere, even in apartment buildings. They get up on the roof or out the window and they're firing. It's really interesting. And they don't have a Santa Claus here, although you do see people sometimes dressed up with Santa Claus stuff. What they have is Daddy Frost and the Snow Maiden. And they're the ones that bring gifts to the children. But in spite of all of the preparations and the shopping, it's not like what we see in the United States. I mean, kids don't get, 10, 15 wrapped Christmas presents. They may get one or two gifts and maybe candy. Candy's a big thing to give. But anyway, so that's kind of how they do it here in Russia. They do observe Christmas. They all know the 25th is the Western Christmas. And, people are they're very diligent about sending Christmas wishes and greetings to their American friends or their friends in Europe, whatever. Now, contrast that, Eric, to Christmas back in the USA, where we were both born and raised. It's pure capitalism. And I have to say, it's capitalism here as well, but it's not
You're freezing.
On steroids.
I think Russia has not been consumed by consumerism the way the United States has. Your image is freezing, Regis.
Well, I don't know why. We've got an unstable internet here, but we'll continue to go with it because, this is not just a test. It's my first attempt to do this. And I don't know what I could attribute the unstable internet to, except that there's tremendously high winds outside. And I don't know if that could be disturbing, the transmission lines, to and from the different providers to the home, because it's all, hardwired. Anyway, so that's Christmas. The thing about it is that, and I guess maybe this might be controversial to a lot of people, but a lot of people are waking up, especially with the Israeli genocide on Palestine. In fact, Jesus was a Palestinian. He wasn't a white guy. And, what's happened is Christianity, at least in the West, has made him their poster boy, a white Jesus and a white Mary and a white Joseph. That's really kind of hijacked who he really was. And anyway, I don't know what your thoughts on that are. You're born into a Jewish family, and you've been living in Thailand, and you were in China for a long time, and you practice and study Buddhism. What are your thoughts on a white Jesus?
Well, I see a lot of Palestinians, and they have different skin colors, so it's hard to say, what is a real Palestinian. So, I don't know. Of course, when people adopt a deity, they make it look like themselves. That's just the way it is. So it's understandable that's the way they would do it. I mean, give him credit. At least he's not blonde, and Mary isn't a redhead. So at least you got to hand it in that to them. I don't know what to say. I think the main issue is that people, they have a belief system, and rather than adapting their belief system to reality, they adapt reality to where their belief system is. So that's the reason why Jesus appears to be a white guy rather than somebody with a darker skin. I mean, they're Arabs. There's a lot of Arabs who have relatively light skin. So
Yeah, but those images of Jesus were all created by Western European artists, probably mostly Italian.
that's true. That's
Anyway, so still on the topic of Christmas, Eric, I want to talk about our favorite creature, Donald Trump. Uh, he announced on Christmas that he was going to bomb those ISIS scum in Nigeria. I mean, on Christmas, he announces it. Now, this is the peace president, okay? The guy who made fun of Obama and Bush and Biden for all their wars and all their killing. And here he is, and this isn't the only time, but he announces on Christmas that he's going to bomb these ISIS scum in Nigeria. The other part of his Christmas greeting was separate for this, but it was on Christmas. I don't know if you've seen this yet. He sent Christmas greetings to everyone, including all of the radical left scum. Can you believe that? I mean,
well, you got to hand it. He's got a very respectful attitude. Not.
Oh man, a respectful attitude. So these radical left scum, they obviously are all of the Democrats. They are.
The radical left isn't even Democrat.
Yeah. But that's who he includes in it, right? I mean, anybody who's against him are scum. And as you keep mentioning, if they're people of color, I mean, he's a racist to the core and always has been. You can look at what he's done with the deportation of all these people from not only the Americas, but anywhere in the world. He's kicking them out of the country. Mm-hmm. It's really, to me, is really pitiful. It's like, I wake up every day thinking he can't outdo himself, and yet he does.
Uh-huh.
With either his statements or his actions. And he professes to be a Christian. He goes to religious service occasionally. I mean, it's photo ops, I'm sure. But then wearing a yarmulke, he declared himself as the first Jewish president. Do you remember him saying that?
Yeah, I saw the clip of him and this guy, Mark Levin, who is a rabid Zionist, who puts his arm, it's like, talk about owned. There's this Jewish Zionist, wealthy Jewish Zionist. He puts his arm around Trump. He's ours. He's ours.
Yeah.
You're a Jew, aren't you? And he says, yeah, I'm a Jew. He completely owned. It's really pathetic.
I mean, Eric, psychologically, this guy must be diagnosed under several illnesses. He has to be. What are your thoughts on Trump and kind of like what makes him up? What's going on inside of that head of his?
Well, I just want to mention at the beginning that there's a scene where Trump acts like Netanyahu's butler, and Netanyahu's about to sit down at a table, and Donald Trump, helps him with his chair as if he's a waiter in a restaurant or a butler or something like that. He's completely subservient. He's obviously deeply, it's like a Stockholm syndrome to the max, where he's really internalized a subservience to the people who have donated to him, and he's obviously deeply implicated with Jeffrey Epstein, who's also Jewish. And it's like really embarrassing. It's like, I'm raised Jewish. I thought, who are these people? I mean, my mother used to talk about obnoxious New York Jews, but this is way beyond anything I could have imagined. These people are real, serious. They're way out of their minds, and yet they've somehow captured this guy. Well, they've captured the whole Democratic Party and Republican Party, so, and he's just the most extreme example of it. But the thing that I think is important is that people always say Trump, 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 but I say no. This is systemic. Biden was vetoing UN resolutions. He was giving bombs to Israel. So the Democrats are almost as bad. They're almost as bad as Trump. I mean, Trump, sent the embassy to Jerusalem, which is really over the top. He deeded the Golan Heights to Israel as a gift to Miriam Adelson. For him, everything is just a real estate deal. And since he's been in New York with all these New York Jews, they've just captured him, it looks like to me.
Yeah. And, you mentioned the Democrats they're just like the Republicans. They're just like Trump. It's been said many times, two sides of the same coin, or, a bird has two wings. And, what's really discouraging and disheartening, and really I could use more adjectives than that, but what's happened to a political situation in the United States, I never thought it would come to a state of where it is today. With such antipathy, such hostility towards each other. And, they're not serving the American people. That's been obvious to a lot of people like you and me, and people that have been onto this for a lot longer than I have. They realize that they don't have a say. It's not it's a representative democracy. It's not direct democracy. And that's never been clearer than it is today, I think, Eric, that the people's needs are not being served. And yet Trump is up there saying, look I'm doing all of this for you. Look how great the economy is. Look at inflation. Look at employment. It's highest it's ever been. And manufacturing is back. And, it's all lies. And yet the majority of American people are not feeling it yet. Eric, this is the football season, for the end of the season, championships for college and professionals. And, I watch sometimes some of the replays because I still can't get sports out of my system. And the stadiums are full. The basketball arenas are full. The hockey arenas are absolutely full of people. I don't get it. I guess too many people must be doing too well.
Well, they're spending good money, and the question is it money that's on a credit card or what? And who is this demographic that is actually paying for this stuff? Noam Chomsky once pointed out that this whole sports culture is basically a distraction. These people should be at union meetings agitating for higher wages, and instead they get into this, it's my team versus your team. It's a complete it's a ploy by the real owners to distract people from what the real issues are and why they shouldn't be demonstrating and raising signs at football games. They should be doing stuff that deals with real issues. But of course, people are to a large degree oblivious of it, and I think they're oblivious of it on purpose because American people are really in serious denial about the reality of situations. I talk with people here, and these are intelligent, educated people, and they have no clue about what the Ukraine war is about.
They have no clue as to what is happening to the dollar, their precious dollar. You and I know that because we're not living there, and we see what the rest of the world is saying and what the rest of the world is doing in terms of abandoning the dollar. In fact, Bloomberg has said that Trump is probably the one that's hastening the demolition of the dollar. And he's forced countries like the BRICS countries and the global South to start trading, and they've been doing it for some time now, in their own currencies. They have their own investment bank. China's got another investment bank. And what their currencies of the new economy is being based on is gold. They're all going back to the gold standard. They're buying gold. Governments have been buying gold like crazy. And their economies now are not only based on gold, but the assets and the labor of the various different countries. And they're working out some kind of a balance. I don't understand all the economics behind it, but what is definitely happening that Americans don't seem to realize is the dollar is losing value. And Eric, it was just reported today by Bloomberg that the ruble this year outpaced all other major economies. It's up to something like 87 rubles to the dollar.
No, it was 79 rubles to the dollar, which is better. See,
no, you're right. I'm sorry. You're right. 78 to 79.
I just saw it, and that's the lowest it's been in since I remember, in at least the last couple of years.
So, old Mr. Trump, with all of his shenanigans, I guess has hoodwinked, if not the majority of American people, at least a very, very large chunk that still have enough dollars in their pockets or enough room on their credit cards to continue their own lifestyles. But I think, when you look at what's happening to the price of gold and silver, I've never been much into this, but gold is over $4,000 an ounce. And silver now, in Shanghai, it was just reported, is up to $81 or $82 an ounce. Mm-hmm. And it's skyrocketing. Well, what that tells you is people are converting their money into hard metals. Mm-hmm. And it's not just gold and silver, it's platinum and whatever else is out there that are extremely valuable. Mm-hmm. Anyway,
here in Thailand, they have gold shops. There's gold shops everywhere. And I just went to a local market, where you buy fruits and vegetables and meat and those kinds of things. And there's a lot of little stores where you can buy clothes. And these are not expensive. These are not, exclusive places. These are where the working class goes. But there must be at least 3 gold shops. And I looked at, and they always post the price. And it was over 66,000 Thai baht for 1 unit of gold, and that's a new high. When I first came here years ago, it was something like maybe 18, Thai baht to 1 unit. It's now 66, and this is a new high, which is also interesting to me because there's a lot of people who think about Bitcoin is, and the cryptocurrencies are going to be the thing, the next big thing, and yet they're kind of dawdling along, not doing very much, and gold keeps going up. Interesting.
Yeah, and I've never been one that was keen about money and investing. The mother of my kids, when the kids were growing up, we began putting money into the stock market. And, I don't know what happened after all of that, but I never did invest in it. I never had much to invest in the first place. But, when I came, I don't mind telling this story because it has everything to do with what we're talking about, gold and silver. When I came here 6 years ago, I had $1,000, American dollars, cash, that I put in an envelope and stuck it in a drawer. And I never touched it. And, I'm thinking, that's really kind of stupid. If I just put it in a bank here, and the banks were giving really good interest rates for a while. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think one time, Sberbank, the biggest bank in Russia, it's the majority owned by the federal government, which means it's pretty safe. I think they were offering 25% interest on, like, if you put in a certain amount of money and you had to leave it in there. Well, I didn't do that because I never was thinking in those terms of having to make money on my money. But then a couple of my friends here had been investing in gold and silver for many years, and they said, it's gold and silver. Every time we met, every couple of weeks, they kept talking about how it's going out of sight. And they would send me these videos about all these major gold buyers and sellers and investors. And it's like they said, man, you got to take your $1,000 and invest it in silver. I couldn't afford gold. So silver. So I did. And when I invested it in October, it was at $47 an ounce. A couple of weeks later, it dropped to 46. And I used my credit card to get another $1,000. So I invested now $2,000. And in 2 months, Eric, it's risen to just about $80 an ounce.
Wow.
And the prediction is it's going to hit $100 an ounce by springtime. Now, what I've learned is the reason that's happening is what we're talking about. The entire world is losing faith in the dollar. It's going fast. That the dollar is worth less and less and less all the time. And I think that should be a wake-up call to people in the United States. I mentioned to a friend of mine in the United States, Eric, I said, have you got investments in the stock market? And yeah, mutual funds or whatever. And I said, you got to look at silver. You got to look at silver because it's going out of sight. And I told him about my own experience. And he goes, nah, the dollar's really rock solid. I'm not really worried about it. And so I sent him a video. I hope he'll watch it. But anyway, what we're talking about really is what Trump is doing and what Bloomberg has just said. He is bringing about the total collapse of the United States dollar. Now, Eric, some other time we can delve into this on really what is going on, not only in the United States, but globally. It's not happening by accident. I think you and I both know that. But we'll save that for another time. I want to, pardon me. I want to go back now to Israel and Donald Trump. Okay. And by the way, we've got 4 people viewing this live. It's being live on Facebook, YouTube, and X. Oh, I've got a bad cough. And we've got somebody here is a new friend, Arsenal Trill. He's made a number of comments. He seems to be very much aware of Trump and what's going on with the dollar and the stock market. So I wanted to give a shout out to him or her. I don't know. Got a bad cold. But I want to get back to Trump now in Israel because, you and I have talked about this and a lot of people are, but there's still the biggest problem for me, the biggest scandal for me is the silence from the rest of the world. You get protests, strong condemnations from China, from Russia, from Ireland. I mean, all over the place. They're condemning it, but nobody has had the ability to do anything about it. And Eric, when Donald Trump, when he professes to be a Christian and a Jew, how does the Christian side of him continue to be 100% involved with Bibi in the genocide of Palestinians? $34 billion a year. and people are silent. People in America, there are people protesting. There are probably lots and lots of them, but nothing is happening. Eric, your thoughts on the complicity, not only of Donald Trump, but the complicity of people who are speaking out about it, but doing nothing. Your thoughts?
Well, this has been a really terrible, it's a terrible situation. I compare, you're probably familiar with the concept of responsibility to protect. Do you know this idea? So the United States went into Yugoslavia with the idea of responsibility to protect the poor Bosnian Muslims against the evil Serbians, even though the poor Bosnian Muslims were using Osama bin Laden to fight. So, there's a little bit of a problem there, when you have an actual Muslim terrorist and we're protecting them, but we call it responsibility to protect. And then you had the Libyan situation where, again, we had Hillary Clinton talking about distributing, Gaddafi was distributing Viagra to, 20-year-old guys who really don't need Viagra to rape women. But that was the reason why we went into Libya, destroyed that country using the pretext of responsibility to protect. But then when the Nazis in Ukraine were continually attacking the people in Donbass, nobody said anything about it. And it took Russia 8 years to finally, wake up and do something about it, for which they are criticized as invading unprovoked. Now we get to Gaza, and China is not doing it. Where is the responsibility to protect? That is the question. It does. Where there's a will, there's a way. If the U.S. is not willing to pass a resolution in the Security Council, there was a resolution in the General Assembly that says we need to deal with this problem, and yet, as you say, it's not. It's a complete failure of humanity, and it's just a crying shame. And of course, who am I? I'm just some guy in Thailand. I have no power. I can bring things like this to people's attention. But it's a real failing of humanity, that they allow this to happen.
Yeah, I'll beg to differ with you, but I think we agree. You and I do have power. Mm-hmm. Anybody who consistently speaks out on these issues has power. Mm-hmm. We may not be in the United States with tens of thousands of our comrades with signs on a weekly basis, a bi-weekly basis, a daily basis. They are doing something. They are informing and educating people publicly. Mm-hmm. There are others who, like you and I, who are using social media, and not just through video like this, but through their posts on Facebook, on X, on Twitter, on Instagram. There are people that are doing something mm-hmm. to try to create this awareness, this sense of urgency, mm-hmm. This sense of, to counter this sense of hypocrisy, the silence of the rest of the world. And, I think with citizenship on this planet comes a responsibility to speak out, to do whatever we can, even mm-hmm. though it seems at times like we're voices crying out in the wilderness. But people have to do something. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate those comments of yours, Eric. And
Regis, I was just on Facebook today, and a friend of mine, an old friend of mine from the Zen Center back, we're talking 40, 50 years ago, posted something in this vein, and I responded to it. And one of the other women who I knew, again from 50 years ago, said, "So Eric, what do we do about it?" And I said, "Go to my website. Here's the link to my website. Share it with other people." because that's how it works. This is like the drip system where, or the what do they call it? The hundredth monkey, where you have to get enough momentum of consciousness within the population where things change. I was just looking at there was by this, it was an article about a novel written by Maxim Gorky. He was a very famous Soviet era author who lived through the Russian Revolution. And this book is called The Mother. And it's about this poor, poverty stricken woman. She doesn't know what the hell's going on. But her son says, "Hey, Mom, we really need to do something." And eventually she gets it, and she starts, contributing to a movement that finally got rid of the Tsar and got Russia off of its duff to become the Soviet Union. And people can say whatever they want about the Soviet Union. It in 20 years the people, it was 80% illiterate. Now they're 100% illiterate, 100% literacy. They defeated the fascists overwhelmingly. After being decimated, within 12 years, they have the first satellite and then the first man in space. How did they do that? It's because they were talking about consciousness, so building social consciousness. And that's what Maxim Gorky was talking about in his novel. And that is what I harp on all the time. We have to build social consciousness to understand, turn off the football, turn off the major media, and go and look, come and see that famous movie about World War II. You have to apply yourself, develop some critical thinking and see what's going on. When you hear some news story, you say, really? And secondly, who benefits from making this news story? Those two critical questions. So that's the purpose. That's why you and I are in such alignment, because I think we understand this point.
You talk about, you're really talking about socialism and communism here, which those two terms in the West, in the United States, are anathema. You can't use those. People just go berserk when you're suggesting that we take care of the commons, we take care of each other. It's become dog eat dog in the United States and the West. It's getting ahead by climbing over anybody, keeping up with the Joneses and all of that. But I can tell you, living here now in the Russian Federation it's going to be 6 years coming up soon, there are still the remnants of the Soviet era. And they're more than just little remnants. They've been ingrained into much of this society. I think the younger people, perhaps not so, but people who are at least were born in the Soviet Union, which was, 30 years ago. The sense of commons, the sense of taking care of each other, the sense of sharing. I have to tell you, this is kind of interesting, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. A couple of times we've been at dinners and stuff, and there's been candy on the table, and you finished eating and everybody's talking. Russian dinners, they go on forever, and there's toast after toast after toast. So there was a bowl with a bunch of candies. And so I grabbed one, I opened it, and I ate it, and it was like, well, I was reprimanded, scolded later by my wife. He said, "You just don't do that here." I said, "Well, what do you mean? It was on the table, and people are eating food, picking whatever they want. I figured the candy was there. I could pick and eat the candy." And she said, "You don't understand. If you have a piece of candy, you always share it. Now, you could have taken the whole bowl of candy and offered everybody a piece of candy, but you didn't. You just took one and you ate it." Well, that wasn't the first time. The next time, in our very apartment, there was some candy and chocolate candy, and it was like filled with rum or whiskey or something or other, and it's very expensive stuff. And people here, they enjoy good chocolate. So I took one of these candies, opened it. We were sitting at the table, and I ate the whole thing. And I was reprimanded sternly, again, by my wife. And she said, "You share it. We always share." She said, "When we were little kids, if there was one piece of candy, we would cut it up into tiny pieces so everybody could have a piece."
Mm-hmm.
And you know what that did? That impressed upon me this sense that these people have of sharing, taking care of each other, of not being selfish. And Eric, I have to tell you, and I'm happy to mention this. Only a few times have I done it in my shows. The sense of commons here is extraordinary. I've never seen it anywhere else. You've been here many times. Moscow, clean as a whistle. Yalta, old, very old, clean as a whistle. Oh, you can find places where drunks have thrown bottles and trash, whatever. But in the neighborhoods, in the apartment blocks like mine, the old people, old babushkas who are maybe in their 80s, maybe even 90s, are out there with a broom, sweeping the leaves away from the front of the apartment. Another old babushka with a bucket of water and a rag is cleaning the steps of our five floor apartment buildings.
Mm-hmm.
You see this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric, when you mention that we have to become, and when I say we, I don't mean just people in America in the West, but around the world, have got to rediscover that sense of the commons, that sense of community. We are a world community of brothers and sisters, really. And Eric, I go back to the Native American, and I think it's probably characteristic of all indigenous peoples, their understanding of their relationship with the earth and with each other, with the animals, with the plants, that everything populates it. And they had a deep respect for all of that. And you know, it's not in modern day religion. I think it's in what the Native Americans, who didn't have a religion, but they had a spirituality, a spiritual awareness of the Creator and everything in it. And I think if we can only discover that as humans, we can discover what it means to be really human. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's a lot of philosophizing. And
well, you know, the picture of the Last Supper, what were they doing with the bread? They didn't. It wasn't slices in a bowl. It was a loaf of bread. Somebody takes this chunk, they pass it on to the next person. They take a chunk of it. It's one loaf of bread, and they share the whole loaf of bread. And so that's an example of it. This is that's a thing. Regis, is that people don't realize that there's something you could call it the perennial philosophy, where this whole philosophy of individualism is an aberration of what humanity is really about. In Buddhism, there's this idea of universal good, which means that sentient beings are saving sentient beings. You're not the one. You're not trying to save yourself. We are saving everybody together. And when we work together to save everybody, this is mutual aid. You don't build a barn by a bunch of individuals, trying to do it themselves. You get the community together and you build the barn. So this is the kind of mentality that people need. And of course, and the whole purpose of modern civilization, especially capitalism, is to atomize people and separate them so that and distract them from their common dreams and aspirations. That's the problem. That's what we have to reinvigorate in the society.
Yeah, I obviously agree with you 100%. I want to shout out to somebody who's following us here and making a lot of comments. Arsenal Trill has been commenting throughout the show. My good friend Peter Frowine, who is watching right now. And Peter, I don't know if you saw the part on the fall of the dollar and the rise of metals, gold and silver, but that was a tip of the hat to you, my friend. And, you know, we've had actually 4 people viewing this first live stream, Eric. And, you know, that's without any really advertisement. I didn't send a mass email list out to people. I guess I'm going to have to do that to try to increase the viewership. What I really like about the live stream, Eric, and what motivated me to do this after all these years that I've been doing media and social media and these shows, is that people can chat. They can talk back to you. And I posted a couple of comments, and I really like that aspect of it, because what my hope is that we might be able to create kind of a community this way, live, virtually, rather than, you know, later on somebody watches it and then they send a comment, I like the show, or, you know, you're absolutely crazy, or whatever it is. This is really great, and I'm really hoping that this can grow. And I would like to point out that I'm going to continue doing this on a regular basis. I'll be doing some additional shows in the next couple of days that will be recorded and then published later. But I'm going to transition to doing nothing but live stream. I think it's the best way to go. The other thing that I'm looking forward to do, Eric, and you'll definitely be a part of it. I was on the final edition of Dr. Wilmer Leon's Connecting the Dots podcast. He could no longer continue because he said he couldn't afford it. And
wow.
And you know, he's got like 15,000 followers. And he has a woman, very talented, who's created, she's the producer for his show. She's created the artwork and she manages the guests, and it was really sad. But what happened was she surprised him for this last show by inviting a number of us who had been guests on his show over the past. And I was one of them. Together with, I think at one point there were nine of us that had joined the live stream. And I saw the format, and there were some really influential people there, very well known, with large followings on social media. And I loved the dynamic of it, because Dr. Wilmer Leon would be making different comments, and he would say, okay, now I'm going to send it over to Regis or to X or to Y. And then we started talking about some issues, which is what his show's all about, connecting all the dots. And nobody really did any kind of ranting. People just made simple comments, quick reply to what the topic was. And I found that it was so energizing. It was really dynamic and really engaging. And I thought, I'm going to move in that direction as well. And so that's one of my goals for the new year, to begin with maybe 6, maybe as many as 8 friends who would come on, and we would talk about only 1 or 2 topics and just get the views, and do that all live. Anyway, so much for New Year's resolutions. Let's end on this, Eric. Because when people look at what's happening in their world today, it's really easy to get depressed and feel overwhelmed. So many people are acknowledging that. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, many are in denial. They have to be in denial because they can't accept it. It's too earth-shaking. In fact, it's a matter of shaking their own idea of who they are and who they've been living in the United States or living in the West.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's any hope, you and I both know that it lies in the BRICS movement, which is growing and growing every day, this new multipolar world. There's a lot of people that are critics of it. They say that, oh, these countries are never going to be able to cooperate. They're always going to fight, blah, blah, blah. But people like President Putin and President Xi are redefining the values of individuality, the preservation of civilization values, the preservation of sovereignty of all nations, no matter how large or small, the commitment to everybody is a right to develop in their own way. And as a new multipolar coalition, if you want to call it that, it's dedicated to helping, like the rising tide, all boats rise. And they're committed. If there's anything they state, first and foremost, is a strict observance of international law and a strict observance and return to the foundation, the pillars of the United Nations. I wonder what your final thoughts are on whether you see this as hopeful. I think there's going to come great suffering. We're not done suffering anywhere, but I do think this movement of multipolarity offers the only sign of hope that humanity has looking forward. Your thoughts?
Well, you're absolutely right. You know, the way I see it is the collective West, so-called, has been running things for 500 years at the expense of everybody else, and it's a very self-destructive mechanism. So there's I'm planning an article actually which talks about Mackinder, who is the guy who decided that he's a British guy, says we're going to control the world by controlling Eurasia. And then you had Vladimir Lenin, who talked about imperialism as the last stage of capitalism, and the fact that capitalism needs imperialism in order to survive. And then you have Oswald Spengler, who said at the beginning of the 20th century, we've had a great run, but we just nearly committed suicide in World War I, and we're heading downhill here. And here we are, literally 100 years later, and we're well along that path. And that path is leading to oblivion. And that's the reason why the BRICS. It's not like the BRICS as the BRICS. It's the common humanity coming to this conclusion that this whole idea of individualism, domination, that is not working. And if we're going to survive as a planet, we have to start setting aside our individual differences, learning how to cooperate, and helping each other. And because we do have common values. You know, when I talk about religions, Muslims use prayer beads, Catholics use prayer beads, Buddhists use prayer beads. They all bow. So what are they? So who cares what your particular idea is? You have this inherent understanding of how do you develop your spirituality, and so that's just one example of it. So,
yes, as a raised Roman Catholic, I'm very familiar with the rosary, the prayer beads.
Right.
And Eric, I can't reach them now, but I have two of them up here, Russian prayer beads that so many people have. I haven't started. There you go. Can't see it. There it is. There it is. Wow. That's a long one. Anyway, Eric, listen, this has been really enjoyable, as it always is, talking with you. Can't thank you enough for taking the chance to come on this experiment, this first ever live stream for me. We've had as many as 8 viewers, which, wow, that's a record, Eric. My first live stream had 8 viewers, and a couple of people actually went out of their way to chat and say hello. Encourage everybody else who's on there to check us out the next time. It'll be coming up pretty soon. And Eric, you're going to be a regular on this.
Great, thank you. I won't feel irrelevant anymore.